Hello there and welcome to The Ring, Euronews' weekly debate show. I'm Maeve McMahon, broadcasting from the Europe House in Dublin, the capital of Ireland. Well, as you know, each week on The Ring, politicians go face to face on some of the most pressing issues facing the continent today. Well, this week we're exceptionally in Dublin as Ireland has taken over the rotating presidency of the Council of the European Union. But what does that mean for the country? And will Ireland be able to steer the ship and have some influence over the next 6 months? Luis Albertus has more.
An EU member since 1973, Ireland is now in the spotlight as it takes on the presidency of the Council of the EU for the next 6 months. With an ongoing war in Ukraine, pressure to finalize the EU's long-term budget, and growing demands for greater technological and energy independence, how will Ireland succeed? Ireland has built a thriving economic model around attracting major US tech companies. But now it will have to help steer discussions on European digital sovereignty and on reducing strategic dependencies. Europe is also under pressure to strengthen its defense capabilities. But Ireland's military neutrality and decision not to join NATO could make this one of the most sensitive issues of its presidency. Can a small country like Ireland make a big impact? And can it turn 6 months in the spotlight into lasting influence?
Some of the questions we have for our contenders, let's meet them.
Neil Richmond, Ireland's Minister of State for International Development and Diaspora. He represents the centre-right Fine Gael, a member of the European People's Party. One of his party's most outspoken pro-European voices, he built his reputation on Brexit and EU affairs. He's firmly pro-business and pro-European and has repeatedly challenged Ireland's long-standing policy of military neutrality, once describing it as morally degenerate in the context of Russia's war against Ukraine. Rose Conway-Walsh, a far-left Sinn Féin Dáil deputy representing the Mayo constituency, a prominent advocate for increased public spending and regional development. She's a supporter of Irish unity and a vocal critic of what she sees as years of underinvestment. She's also challenged the government by arguing that Ireland must strike a balance between protecting strategic industries and jobs while remaining firm in its international commitments.
Neil Richmond and Rose Conway-Walsh, welcome to The Ring.
Thank you.
So, as you can see, Ireland is in the spotlight. Will this be a chance for the country to shine, or is it just really keeping the show on the road, Neil?
Hopefully it is an opportunity to show off the best of Ireland, but there's a lot of work to be done, and making sure that we get through this 6-month period as the honest broker, progressing the European agenda, is really important.
Your view on that?
I think it's really important for us to have the EU presidency. It only comes around every 13 years or so. So this is a real opportunity for us to show what the real values of the Irish nation are. And I think peace has to be central to that. But also equality. We're very conscious of so many people being left behind in the EU. We want to make this EU very relevant for the EU population as a whole.
What would be a successful presidency? Should it be focusing on EU enlargement, the budget? What do you think?
I think there's two really big issues. Firstly, it is the budget. It is the key part at the negotiating of the multi-annual financial framework where we need to get that level of compromise, that level of agreement. It's vital. But secondly, there's an ongoing legislative push that Ireland has been behind in terms of the omnibus package on simplification. We've heard what Letta has said. We've heard what Draghi has said. Now we actually have the legislative tools to push them along. If we get those two big achievements moved along by December, I'll be very happy.
And you mentioned Mario Draghi. He's, of course, meeting Ursula von der Leyen this week for talks. But let's go back to the launch of the presidency, which took place earlier this month, of course, with President Zelensky of Ukraine. He was here. We've also seen the EU Foreign Chief, Kaja Kallas, come into town as well. But slightly coinciding with the launch of the presidency, Rose Conway-Walsh, was the whole Organische Lumina scandal, or investigation, if you like. A refinery in Limerick that was allegedly helping to fuel Putin's war in Ukraine. Now, there is an investigation that's come out by auditors saying that sanctions have not been breached here, but has this been embarrassing for Ireland?
No, I don't think so. I think we're waiting for the report to come out. Whatever that report says, I think it's very important that the Irish government respond to that. But there's also a role for the EU to play in it. It is important that obviously companies here, that we have an ecosystem that upholds international law and human rights. And at the same time, it's very important that those jobs are protected. We're talking about 2,000 jobs, direct and indirect, in an area that has been neglected for so long. So I think it's important that the government get in there, that the EU get in there to support those jobs, to assure that the markets are diversified, because aluminium is such a product that's in such demand across the EU. It shouldn't be going to Russia.
So the plant will stay open for now?
Absolutely. Let's be quite clear. Alumina isn't a sanctioned project. And all through the 21 EU sanctions packages against Russia, Ireland has backed every single package. We've never looked for an exemption. We've never argued against it. And indeed, David O'Sullivan, former Commissioner Secretary General, has repeatedly said that Ireland is one of the best member states in terms of actually applying the sanctions. So we work with Commission partners. We have a very detailed investigation. Very serious charges were made against where the products are going. There is a lot of confusion about that.
And this Limerick refinery is front page of all the European papers.
And understandably so. And throughout Russia's horrible war in Ukraine, we've been quite clear that we can have nothing that is helping Russia in that effort. That's why we've been to the fore in terms of coming down against the Russian shadow fleet, why we've pushed so hard in relation to energy capping, and why we have worked consistently within the Council as well as across the European Parliament to make sure that we back sanctions, that we back supports, and we challenge the likes of the former Hungarian regime under Viktor Orban.
Well, of course, it's a different EU now since Peter Mayer has come into power. But of course, you mentioned the war in Ukraine. What about defence? There was a new report out this week by the European Defence Agency saying that Ireland is spending the least in the whole of the European Union on defence, just 0.2 of its GDP. Is that okay, do you think?
Well, defence spending has been increased in Ireland, and I welcome that because there have been years, if not decades, of neglect in the whole area of defence. I'm glad to see that being addressed now.
Spending?
But it's up to 5% is what the EU want. But I think we need to be very careful. We are not going down the path of a European army or of the militarisation. Defence is a member state obligation, and it's a member state competency.
Should Ireland join NATO, do you think?
No, I don't. No, I think our defence is sovereign, and I think we're a military neutral country, and I think we need to be assured in everything that we do that we remain military neutral. That is the wish of the Irish people.
But will it not get awkward now during the presidency? Because of course the big conversation today in Brussels is rearming Europe, getting ready by 2030, pumping billions into defence, and whereas Ireland, it's the lowest spender in the bloc.
And that's why it's important we talk about facts domestically as well as on a European level. The EU doesn't want member states to get to 5% defence spending. That's NATO rules.
No,
Secondly,
right.
There's no plan for an EU army. That's a concept that is regularly put out by your political party. That's not on the blocks. What the Irish government has said consistently, we had a commission on defence. We are going to double our defence spending. It'll be up to €3 billion a year in the next year or two.
By when?
In the next 2 years, we've installed new drone defence technology, new radar technologies. We know that the situation in Europe at the moment, where there is literally a war on our borders and there's levels of hybrid terrorism that couldn't have been countenanced 10 years ago, requires a response.
Who would protect the Irish if there was an invasion? And I'm talking as well as cyber attack, sabotage.
Well, some progress has been made there, but obviously there will be cooperation with other member states as well, and indeed with our nearest neighbour. But that must be done, but not our military neutrality.
You trust on the UK to save Ireland now when they've so much on their hands?
It's not a case of trust in the UK to save Ireland. I mean, we are increasing, as you said, our own spending in that area, in sonar and radar and things that need to be done. But obviously, as a small nation, we will never be in a situation where we can be completely standalone in terms of our defence. So I think it's important for member states to work together, but it's very important. Sovereignty is very important too, and making our own decisions is very important.
And is there any pressure now on Ireland to join NATO?
There's absolutely no pressure for us to join NATO. And I think, to be quite frank, it's never a discussion that's actually brought up around defence ministers' tables. It's more of an obsession here. We should be able to talk about security and neutrality without drifting into the space of NATO. What is really, really clear is that Europe wants to increase levels of cooperation on security and defence and increase the levels of spending. Ireland wants to be part of that, because the day of invasions isn't what we're worried about. We had a cyber attack in this jurisdiction only a couple of years ago, took our health system offline. That came from Russia. We need that investment and cooperation.
And what the people want is Irish neutrality to be enshrined in the Constitution. And I think that is something very important and something that needs to be done to reassure Irish people. There is a lack of trust. There is a lack of trust in government, but there's in this area, but there's also a lack of trust in the EU project as a whole.
Rose, that's completely false. You can't just say, you've just presented something that's factually
incorrect. Please let me
finish
my sentence.
Okay, but I have to correct
your sentence and then we'll bring in Neil Richmond.
There is a creeping militarisation. If you look at the EU spending spending and the EU funding that we have. People do not want funding spent on militarisation when so many people are suffering with the cost of living and going without, and there's been so much neglect in areas.
Would you agree with
well.
that? People actually are struggling back home and they don't want to spend on defence?
But people realise that you do need to invest at home. Even when your grocery bills are tough, you still need to spend on locks on your doors and you still need to have a house alarm. Rose is there taken the decision to speak on behalf of the Irish people and said that there's a lack of trust against the EU, whereas every Eurobarometer and European movement support shows
in
that
the area of
I'm sorry, this is really important. No, because in the vast majority of Irish people, not only do they trust in the EU, but actually it's an even split between Irish people who want us to increase in level of defence and security, and also those who don't agree with the policy of military neutrality. But this is a crude thing. Neutrality isn't on the agenda. We don't need it inserted in the Constitution. It's not a constitutional matter. Because there is... Because, repeat, you've just said the Irish people want us to do that. We have a very consistent policy that's not under any threat, bar the opinions of the opposition politicians. Whereas, on a European scale, we're trying to prove to European partners that we're serious.
Well, then go to the
defence
people and
security.
ask them. Ask them in a referendum.
OK, right. The last bill presented before the Dáil, would you be able to say that you back the people of Palestine over Israel under that? No, because we have to be neutral. Your virgin neutrality, and the one that you talk about without going into the depth, completely removes the ability to work with partners. We're not neutral. We're in the European Union. We are militarily neutral.
Yes.
Well, as you can see, we're just getting warmed up here on The Ring. Stay with us because we're ready for the next round here on The Ring. Well, as you can see, we're getting a bit of a flavour of the debates that go on inside the Dáil, the national parliaments, and as well, of course, over in Brussels and Strasbourg in the European parliaments. And now it's time to give our viewers a real glimpse of how you actually put questions to each other. Rose Conway-Walsh, you can address your first question. Tina Everett.
OK, well, my first question is around simplification and some of the concerns I have around that. What outcomes would you expect to have from the simplification agenda? And would you be concerned about workers' rights, about environmental rights, and human rights, indeed, with the simplification agenda that's been pushed at EU level?
The simplification agenda is vital. It's vital to ensure the European Union actually keeps pace with the United States and China in terms of creating a more competitive Europe, but also making sure that we have the future jobs and technology that workers will actually be able to have. What we have is 10 omnibus packages, 3 of which have gone through the stage, another 7, at least 3 of those will be pushed ahead by the Irish presidency that are vital. I have zero concerns. I was on the EPSCO Council as an enterprise minister when we worked with both Letta and Draghi to make sure that this agenda is one that does recognise the need to make sure that it is human-led, that workers' rights are protected, that our environmental responsibilities are, but also to make sure that SMEs can actually continue, because repeatedly, and understandably, and I fully agree with Rose, even though we come from different sides of the political spectrum, repeatedly you raise the pressures of bureaucracy on small Irish Indigenous businesses. Well, that's why we need to address that at a European level with a simplification package that allows businesses to be liberated.
That's the administration burden being removed and the red tape being removed, and absolutely I agree with that, but I am very concerned about the deregulation and the push to deregulate. We see in this country alone, in the defective concrete blocks, we're going to end up paying over 9 billion for light regulation in this country, and I don't want to see, we need to see proper regulation. We need to protect our populations from the drive towards greed.
Do you fear it could turn into deregulation?
Not at all. I fully agree with Rose. There is no deregulation agenda there, and we need to nip this in the bud. This is about a simplification to make sure that when we're talking about environmental reporting, that a small business in Galway or Mayo or wherever it may be is not filling in the same form 5 times because it has to do it at a European level, domestic level, and then at a regional level. It's about a simplification agenda to make sure that we can get finance deployed quicker to invest in businesses, invest in workers, invest in education. This agenda is crucial, and if Europe doesn't pursue these omnibus packages, Europe will fall away and simply be a supply chain into China and America.
That's, of course, the view as well of Mario Draghi, if anyone has read his very lengthy report about how we could die, quote, a slow agony. Neil Richmond, your chance now to address your question to Rose Conway-Walsh.
Rose and I repeatedly say that we stand with Ukraine, but I've struggled to... How do we say that we stand with Ukraine when Sinn Féin voted against, in the European Parliament and in the Dáil, the €90 billion loan package that the EU worked so hard, managed to get through when the Hungarian regime changed? Is that standing with Ukraine? Do you really stand with Ukraine?
We absolutely stand very firmly with Ukraine and against the war of aggression from Russia. The reason why we voted in the way that we did against that was because, again, it was impacting our military neutrality. The 20 billion of that was was going towards militarisation. We didn't feel that we could support that. We 100% would support any humanitarian effort for Ukraine. But there's a difference there, and I would ask at EU level that these be separated so that we would be enabled to vote for the humanitarian effort without the militarisation. I don't want us to be paying for weapons to be sent to any country.
No, but they are separated. This is the same with the European Peace Facility. It's the same with this €90 billion loan. It's the same with all the funding that Ireland has prepared, the over 250 million directly and over 250 collectively that goes to support the Ukrainian effort. It is for non-lethal supports. Radar technology surely is okay. Surely mine-clearing technology is okay, as well as an underground school in the Donetsk, as well as providing ambulances and humanitarian equipment. The thing is, they are separated against. But when you put that decision to vote against the €90 million package vociferously by your finance spokesman, and then we see Sinn Féin MEPs in the European Parliament either abstaining or voting against sanctions package, it's hard to believe that you stand with Ukraine.
Do you think there was an understanding of what they were signing against?
Oh, I certainly do, yes. Our MEPs, Lynn Boylan and Kathleen Funchion, knew exactly what they were doing, and we worked together with them from here. But we will not. We will vote.
So why did they vote against sanctions package?
Because we will vote for humanitarian
I'm talking about sanctions packages now. You tied together, you vote against the €90 billion loan assistance domestically and on a European level. At the same time, your MEPs, not just from the group of the left, from the Sinn Féin MEPs, have repeatedly voted against or abstained against the 21 sanctions packages. How on earth can they do that?
Because sometimes when things are all bundled in together and you have
sanctions
amendments, so the amendments weren't accepted, or the amendments weren't voted in it. But we're talking about Ukraine and our stance in Ukraine, and Sinn Féin as a party stand absolutely firmly with Ukraine.
Well, should Ukraine join the European
Union? Twist it any other? Absolutely, yes. And I think that's one of the things that the Irish presidency can do, Ukraine and Moldova, in terms of the expansion of the EU, and that needs to be quick and as quickly as is possible.
Well, we've heard the views from our politicians here. Now it's time to bring in a new voice. I'd like to bring in the voice of Andy Burnham, the brand new Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, the 5th Prime Minister in just 4 years. Speaking earlier this week, he said, "I have a plan, I have a style, it's my style, and that's my mission as your new leader, to bring back hope." What's your view on the new Prime Minister of the United Kingdom and what it will mean for Ireland-UK relations?
Well, he's one in a long line of Prime Ministers in the last 10 years. I wish him well in the job that he's doing. I think Britain has very many challenges. He has lots of challenges to sort out. But for us as a nation, obviously, we want our Irish independence. We want to be in charge of our own affairs. We want to be good neighbours with those beside us. We would hope that he will facilitate that, as was outlined in the Good Friday Agreement.
And Neil Richmond, he's been sworn in on the very week that the EU and the UK were meant to host their summit, all about getting closer together. What will all this mean now, do you think, for Brussels-London relations and, of course, for Ireland?
I think directly in British-Irish relations, this is a good thing. Relations between the two countries, and indeed relations between Britain and the European Union, are so much better today than they were a number of years ago under the likes of Liz Truss or Boris Johnson. I give credit not only to Keir Starmer, but indeed Rishi Sunak for bringing that along. But from a European point of view, there is an opportunity to get ever closer with Britain. As much as they are facing very difficult times, they're still one of the world's largest economies. They are still a very important economic as well as political partner for all of us in Europe. So the closer the relations, the better. Andy Burnham is of Irish descent. His lineage comes from Louth. His constituencies in Manchester have a really strong Irish population. His replacement as Mayor of Manchester, indeed, is from the north. So it's a really positive move, but we want to see that relationship grow ever, ever closer, and perhaps maybe one day we see a British rejoin.
Would you agree with that?
Well, I would like a separation from Britain, never mind us joining closer together, but there are things that we need to tackle together as two islands, like climate change.
And is that separation feasible? Just back to that debate on United Ireland.
Yes,
is that feasible? By
absolutely
when?
It is. I mean, we've seen even in the last week, Neil's own government or a party leader bring it on the whole business. I think it is. We believe that it's possible by 2030. We're coming up to the 28th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement. And I know there's an interparliamentary conference as well that will look at the peace agreement that we have here. I think the EU member states have a lot to learn from our peace agreement. It is the international, legally binding agreement, one of the most enduring in the world.
That's the view from Rose Conway-Walsh. But now it's time to take a very short break here on The Ring. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to The Ring, Euronews' weekly debate show. This week, coming to you from Europe House in Dublin. I'm Maeve McMahon, and for this edition, I'm joined by Neil Richmond and Rose Conway-Walsh, and we're zooming in on the fact that Ireland is currently holding the rotating presidency of the Council of the European Union. Now, we've already heard some views from our politicians. Now it's time to hear from you. We took to the streets of the Irish capital to ask people what issues they wanted Ireland to focus on over the next 6 months, and first, if they even knew the presidency was taking place.
No. I'm away up until the end of the year, yeah.
No, I didn't know.
No, I don't know anything about politics, I'll be honest.
Yes, I did. I don't think there's issues that can push, but I think it should shine a spotlight onto the issues we have here in Ireland. So like the homelessness crisis, for example, I think that should cause a little bit more pressure on politicians to get it done.
The one thing that is anxiety-inducing for me would be the fact that everyone is investing more in militarisation. So disarmament would be key. Divesting from that and maybe investing more in education.
More support for Palestine, less Israeli products on shelves.
Housing.
Probably housing, 100%. Rising cost of living, and a lot of people are even food insecure. People don't realise that. Food insecurity has gone way up. And just support for like local businesses and stuff. You know, a lot of people closing down.
While we're not in NATO, we kind of avoid and stay out of the firing line for at least the media.
We've always been a neutral country and we should stay that way.
No, I think keep our neutrality for sure, yeah.
So there you go, a lot of interesting views, many not even knowing the presidency is taking place. Does that surprise you?
Well, if you're living in Dublin, you can't avoid it because of the traffic, but it doesn't surprise me, no. And I think that's one of the challenges of the presidency is that, you know, that democratic deficit that's there in terms of education for people, or making it relevant, making the whole EU project relevant in people's everyday lives. And they outlined some of them there, like the homelessness, housing, cost of living, all of those things that are impacting people. And obviously Palestine is hugely important here in Ireland as well, and support for Palestine.
Your view there?
I think it is a challenge, but it's also a great opportunity. In 2013, when we last had the presidency, we launched the Blue Star programme in partnership with the European Commission and Parliament. And it's on all of us, not just those in the government, to work with the European member states that have been twinned with our counties. Dublin's twinned with Greece, so I had the Greek ambassador out of the school to talk about, well, how this really matters. And look, I've been working in European politics for over 20 years. The biggest issue for every EU politician, whatever the member state or where they're based or what level they're serving at, is showing the population at large how Europe works for them and how they can influence it.
But as you can see, the disconnect, is huge between the capital city here and Brussels and what exactly is going on. We heard housing mentioned a lot there in that Fox Pop. What can be done here? And do you think Brussels can play a role? Because they're trying to start to play a role here.
I certainly think they can, and I was glad to see at the beginning, at the launch of the presidency, that there was going to be a housing summit here. I think it's something that certainly impacts us here. So many people cannot afford a home now, so it's affordability. But I see there's commonalities across some of the other EU member states as well. So I think collectively it has to be looked at. If people cannot afford a home, so many children growing up homelessness, what price are we going to pay for that in the future? What price are these children paying?
That's the thing,
for
we
us
understand
now?
the problem.
To enable more funding, obviously more funding for housing. The funding has to be also planning in terms of restrictions.
The big focus on defence is going to be in the long-term budgets, whereas housing, won't even get a look in.
Well, actually, this is the first time that we have a housing commissioner. This is the first time that we have the President of the European Council talking about housing as a European issue. It had always been seen as a member state issue, and Rose is right. There isn't an EU member state that isn't having the issue with housing, just like Australia, Canada and the United Kingdom. We're coming out of the financial crash, followed by COVID, followed by Russia's war in Ukraine, that absolutely repressed the ability to build homes. We just don't have enough homes in this country. So that's how we have to work with European partners to get the finance in place and to make sure that we have regulation to allow the government. We built 25% more homes this year than last year. We want to do more of that again and find every which way to build more homes.
And of course, the main goals of the presidency are working on competitiveness and values. Does that mean anything, though, to regular people in the streets of Dublin?
No, one of the values has to be that everybody has a home to live in, has somewhere to live in. So I don't think so. But values in terms of the Irish nation, as I said, support for Palestine, the value of international law, the value of people standing up for people, the value of people not ignoring a genocide that's happening, that's being played out every day on people's televisions and all of that. And yet we are so many months now after what was supposed to be a cessation of violence in Palestine, and people see that that's not happening. So there's protest process in all of the EU
Is
events
Ireland
as well
self-censoring
taking place.
slightly on that topic?
Not at all. I think anyone in an EU member state capital, and I've sat around Foreign Affairs Council meetings where they've asked why is Ireland so focused on the plight of the people of Gaza, the West Bank and indeed into Lebanon. We were the first member state with Spain who not only recognised Palestine but consistently have brought the motion to European Council meeting to suspend the EU-Israel Trade Association Agreement. Rose rightly talks about values, and we hear about the Vox Pop. This matters to the Irish people, it matters to the Spanish people. I'd imagine it matters to every human. But you ask, what do values mean to people? What does competitiveness mean? Competitiveness matters to every single citizen, whether they're buying a cup of coffee, trying to buy a home, or hold down a job. That's why it has to be one of the three pillars of our presidency.
OK, Neil Richmond and Rose Conway Walsh, stay with us as it's now time for our fifth and final round. So now it's time to do something a little bit different. I'm going to ask you a question and you can answer with yes or no. Is that doable?
We'll try. Go on.
Is the European Union a force of good, Neil Richmond, yes or no?
Oh, 100% yes.
Yes.
Is Ursula von der Leyen a good president of the European Commission, yes or no?
Yes.
Should Ireland join the Schengen area, yes or no?
No, because of our relationship with the UK.
No.
Should Ireland join NATO?
No.
Ever?
No.
No.
Is the future of the European Union bright, yes or no?
Yes, if it's done properly.
Yes, very bright.
And should Ireland defend its low corporate tax model, yes or no?
Yes. Tax sovereignty is very important, but obviously we have the OECD agreement now at the minimum rate at 15%, so it's more than one word, but I think that has been settled.
Yes.
There?
Yes, as will the 9 other EU member states whose corporate tax rate actually is lower than ours.
As you can see, tricky to fit into a yes or no there. Is Ireland, though, too dependent on big tech companies?
No.
Yes, I think we need to invest more in our indigenous companies.
What about the climate? Is Ireland doing enough to reach its climate targets? Yes or no?
No, to be honest.
No.
You both agree on that? You agreed on a couple of things, right?
Don't tell anyone.
Neil Richmond and Rose Conway Walsh, that brings this edition of The Ring coming to you from the Europe House here in Dublin to a close. Thank you so much for joining us and thank you for tuning in. Any comments or any issues that you'd like to address, you can always reach out to us here on The Ring at euronews.com. For now, thank you so much for tuning in. Take care and stay with us on Euronews.